Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Girard.
All right, let's face it, hiring friends, family, or familiar faces feels easy because you trust them, you like them, and they're available. Now, what could go wrong? Well, everything when the person you hire turns out to be a warm body in a seat instead of a driver of your mission. On this episode, we're going to tackle the tough and often expensive lesson of what happens when you keep someone on the team too long, not out of loyalty or performance, but because when it's clear that they're not thriving in your company, holding on to them doesn't help them. It definitely doesn't help you grow your business as well either. This is one of the hiring problems that AI cannot fix. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people. We do so by sharing insights from top performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders. Now, today, our guest knows this lesson all too well. His name's Andy Duong. Andy is the CEO of multiple companies. He's a seasoned entrepreneur who's built multiple seven-figure companies by focusing on operational excellence and people-first leadership. He's hired based on core values, scaled teams that perform, and has survived a few hiring mishaps that make for great cautionary tales. What makes Andy the perfect expert for today's topic. Andy, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Rick, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited and pumped to go through this with you. I appreciate it.
I'm excited to have you as well. For those of you who have not joined our show before, we're a problem solution show. The whole premise of the show is to let Andy share some of the experiences, how he kind of built his organizations up when it starts with people. Share with me your journey from a people perspective. What did you do when you first started going? And tell me about that first bad hire you made.
When you were reading that, I had a little PTSD of just reliving some of these, some things that we've gone through in the past, and but also kind of the journey of learning from them, right? So, the biggest, I think we've talked before, Rick, on this, you learn the most from your mistakes and your bad, from your mistakes, right? So, bad hiring is a part of every company's trajectory when they first start. So when we first, started the company, this is my very first company about 10 years ago. We, Falcor Industry, right? That is a commercial lighting distributor, manufacturer. And, at the time, we were new to hiring. We were new to business. We were new to SOPs. We were new to everything, right?
Yeah.
And the lowest hanging fruit in hiring was hire people you knew, who, ask around who needed a job, who can I somewhat trust or kind of know what the personality is like, how they would be in the company, or so we thought, right? So, we hired everybody, including one of my first hires was my own brother. And then we hired his friends that were looking for jobs. We plucked them out of Target. We plucked them out of places that, they were not happy in. And we thought we can provide a better environment for them, right? And we had great success stories as well as horror stories. So kind of what did you want me to kind of delve into first, Rick?
It's kind of interesting you share that story. I hired my brother at one point too.
Yep.
Definitely wasn't his dream job. He did good. Man, we butted heads more than we ever did. I think I agree with what you're saying, that as an entrepreneur, even when I started up InterTrue about a year and a half ago, you start thinking about, gosh, okay, I need help. And that's all you're really looking for is help. You're kind of hoping that people will help alleviate your pain. But man, you learn really quickly that I need the right help.
Yeah.
So you hired your brother, you hired some of your friends. You did make a bad hire, right? So let's talk a little bit about that one bad hire you made.
Oh, okay. So, all the signs were kind of there, but he was a good guy. He was a guy who worked hard. He was trustworthy. And it was our fourth hire, and we hired him for a sales position. No sales experience, but, we thought with the right work ethic, with our training, we can overcome all that, right? And probably about 6 months in, I knew that it wasn't the right hire because one, he didn't understand the product. Two, even through training, he didn't make an effort to further understand the product. Uh, and on top of that, he was not a salesperson, right? He was not somebody that was can talk to somebody and be instantly likable and easy to talk to. Uh, and it was just not for him, right? But along the way, we also thought, hey, a little bit more training, a little bit more direction, a little bit more motivation. Uh, you know, that would kind of light the way, and he would have an aha moment and become a superstar because we were blinded by our previous success, right? The
Yeah.
two sales guys we hired before that, incredible. They became they were eventually superstars, and one of them even became a partner later on. So we were kind of blinded by that success, right? And
Mm.
thinking, we can train our way to anything, right? Uh, so he was with us for about a year and a half. Honestly, a year too long. Thinking, hey, we can train him, we can get him there, right? And it got to a point where we knew and he knew that it wasn't for him, at least for our company. At our company, it wasn't for him. And one of our vendors, one of the guys that were supplying our commercial lighting, small product line for us, plugged him and asked him, "Hey, do you want to come work for me here?" And they were out of Texas, and they needed help. They were, in the same place I was when we first started. Anybody that can feel a warm body in a seat that I can semi trust, I'll give them a shot, right? So, uh, you know, after a little bit of back and forth, we decided, it wasn't a ton of pushback on our end, for obvious reasons. But we thought maybe under somebody else's tutelage, somebody else's uh, program, he can flourish, right? So he actually packed up, moved out to Texas, lived there, and worked there for about a year. Uh, and I think after that year, our vendor found out kind of what we found out as well. This is
Yeah.
not for him. Sales, number one, and lighting wasn't for him.
You're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors.
What I love about the Workforce Agility Limited Series by Cornerstone was we talked to executives and customers all about skills. Cornerstone has a wonderful background in learning and development, training, etc. Their LMS is world class, but they've centered the business now, not just on that, like building upon that, but building upon how everything has moved to the skills economy. So check out the limited series called Workforce Agility, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast. And it's just a wonderful series where we talk to their executives on the shift of why, and also their customers that are using it. So check it out whenever you get a chance. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm digging in deeper with our guest, Andy Duong. He's the managing member of Wolf Hacking Machine Company. And we're talking about his journey in entrepreneurship and how he's been able to build 3 really successful businesses. So we just talked a little bit about one of the problems that he had, and I think we have all we can all identify with hiring that person and keeping them way too long. Now let's talk a bit, Andy, about how you were able to solve that problem. What you learned from that whole experience first.
Well, a lot of things, right? A lot of things. And it was a bad hire that's still kind of haunting us till now,
How
he
so?
had the customers that he did bring in, the very minimal customers that he did bring in, still owe us money 4 years later. So, it was just a culmination of, you know, obviously not a skill fit, not obviously not a company fit, but maybe just, personality fit, everything. Right. So, 4 years
It's
later, we still have 40K debt that his customer owes us, and uh, that we will probably never recover. We've given up hope. All hope is lost on
oh,
that.
that's like the gift
Um,
that keeps on
so
giving that you don't want, right?
yeah, exactly. And these are stories that, like you said, we all relate to in one way or another. So kind of our journey from learning, from kind of going through that, as well as other hires that weren't good fits, uh, we moved into kind of creating a process for our hiring, right? You always hear the terms hire slow, fire fast. How we implemented that was through this process that we kind of developed over the years, and I bring to my different companies and different industries, right?
Before you delve into each piece of the process, do me a favor and just kind of break down the steps that you kind of put in your interview process.
So our interview process is several steps. The first is obviously we go through a recruiting process, and that is sorting through resumes and sorting through filtering questions, right? This is before the actual interview, right? Once we kind of hone in the skill sets, the background, everything that we like, we do a phone interview, and that's a little bit more for delve a little more into skill set and character. And then the last step would be in-person interview or slash skill test.
Okay.
So that's kind of our process. And then the last thing, which I would fully recommend, is checking references and then doing a full background check. And we'll kind of delve a little bit more into why and kind of the horror story behind what happened to us as well.
All right. So let's talk about what you
Yeah.
do before the interview. Walk me through those steps.
Number one, clearly define the role, right? If you don't understand what you need, you're going to hire for all the wrong things, right?
Yeah.
So for us, clearly define the role, the duties, what they're expected on their day to day, with no surprises, right? So clear cut what they're doing day to day, and what they know clear cut what they're doing day to day, right? From there, define what a top performer in that role looks like. What kind of metrics are used to measure success, right?
Okay,
For a
so you're
salesperson,
thinking about setting KPIs for that person before they start, right?
well, KPIs in terms of what success looks like. What does our top performer in that role look like, right? So they have some expectation of, hey, I I get into this role, and to be successful, I have to be at this level, right? Whether that is an X amount in sales for a salesperson, or specific skill sets and ability to do certain things if it's a technical role or hands-on role or warehouse role. Uh, that's the number one thing. Define your role. Make sure both sides you understand exactly what it entails and what a superstar looks like in that role. Number two, filtering questions. So these are things that are non-negotiables for you as a company and as a person filling that role, and that filters out what I always call the Hail Marys, the Hail Mary applications. The guys that have zero experience in this role, have no business applying for the role, but they shoot a Hail Mary because they like the company, they like what we're offering, uh, they like they just need a job, period, right?
You know what? And that's probably
Mhm.
90% of the applicants that just apply through job boards. They auto apply. I like to think of these filtering questions as a call to action. So we actually put this on the job description. We tell people not
Mhm.
to apply to the role through whatever channel it is, but to send us an email and answer these three questions. I have a theory that I haven't been proven wrong on this, but the effort that somebody puts into their job search is the same amount of effort they're going to put into their actual job, because they really
Oh.
need something. So if somebody's just
Mhm.
clicking fast apply, then that's how they're going to show up. They're just going to show up, and
Yeah.
they're there for a paycheck. And that's not a bad thing for some roles. You need to have a really critical, strong person in a role, a high performer.
Mhm.
And if you're listening to this and you're on the job search, stop doing it. Please, for the love of God, stop just hitting auto apply.
Yeah, because these Hail Marys are just buckshotting everything, and they're hoping somebody replies, and they're sitting in the dark, wondering why they're not getting a call back,
Yeah.
or not getting any updates, and it's a waste of time for them, right?
We
It's
we
a
put on
waste
our
of
job
time.
description at the very bottom, we put on their job description, We do not respond to just auto applies, or if you don't put some thought into answering these questions, don't expect a
Mhm.
response from us.
Great. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
That weeds out all the, like you said, the 90% that don't qualify or they're just shooting their shot, right?
yeah,
Because sifting through all this and takes time, going through, all these, people that don't qualify and don't fit your company. It takes time from you and from them, right?
yeah.
So 100% agree. I think that's a great point, Rick.
The other kind of interesting thing is that when you're a small business, you need people who are purely looking to work for a small business. Oh my gosh, somebody who worked over at Google is interested in potentially working for me. They applied to my job. They applied to your job and 5,000 other jobs
Yeah,
because they're looking for a job. But the truth is this person really positioned right for a small startup company?
right.
Most not.
Right. And that's a complete different mindset and different willingness to do things outside of their scope of work, right?
Yeah.
And I've worked for, large corporations, the Bank of America, the Rexels, the Gallup of the world. And they've been around 50, 100 years. They have defined SOPs and roles and, things they do. At a small business, sometimes you're asked to take on things outside of your role. And some people are willing to, and some people are not willing to. So it takes a different
Yeah.
kind of person. So filtering for those people, that's important because, like you said, you can get somebody from Google in, and they have this great resume, but they're not willing to do anything outside of X, Y, and Z, and not willing to help the business grow in other ways, right? Um,
That's so very
and for
true.
the small,
Let's talk about the phone interview. How do you approach a phone interview?
so for us, the phone interview is, at least for me, when I go through the process, it's all about getting a feel for their character and their experiences in the work environment and what drives them in the work environment. Right? Everybody has different drivers uh, in their role. Are they looking
Mhm.
for? Do they do the best when they receive recognition? Do they do their best when they get rewards? How are they working within a team environment? Some people, are superstars but can't work with the team, right?
Yeah.
Uh, they, it's so for some of the things that I dial in on is, and some specific questions I ask that kind of catch them off guard is one, what was the best job you ever had, and why was it the best job you ever had? And for me, what I'm looking for is their motivations. Were they there because they love the work, the role, and is it similar to what I'm offering? Were they there for the money? Were they there for recognition? Were they there because they got along with everybody? Uh, what was their driving factor? What made them enjoy that particular work? And is my environment similar to that?
Yeah, you know what? I like to look at this as positioning because
Mhm.
the environment that somebody does well in, it's ingrained in our DNA. Like if you put me in a large company, I'm going to fail miserably. As a matter of fact, I
Mhm.
interviewed at Amazon at one point, and halfway through the interview, I said, "I'm not your guy. Like, there's no way I'm going to be a person who's just going to come in here and push buttons. Like, I need to be building stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to get bored, and I'm
Mhm.
going to be a nightmare to manage."
Right.
Where are they best? And so they're describing to you the environment in which they thrived and did really well.
Right. Exactly. And then, right there, you can kind of figure out a fit, positives and negatives. And on the flip side of that, I always ask, what was the worst job you ever had and what made it the worst job?
Yeah.
And within that question, I'm looking for uh, anything from, do they have any issues with accountability? Do they have any issues with, uh, management, management teams? Do they have issues with coworkers? Is there a lot of, drama, bickering, those kind of things that, you know, show up in different roles, and the same person time after time. And we've been in environments where that happens, right? So, it's more of like like you said, positioning, a culture fit. Um, and then, from there, I always ask about what they visualize within the company in 3 years, 5 years. Are they looking to grow within the company? Are they looking to stay in that role, or are they seeking something higher, right? And that tells me a lot of, hey, is this a stopgap job? Are they just here for a paycheck? It tells me if they actually like this type of work and they just want to get better and acquire more skills and, go from a trainee to a manager in that role, it tells me if they're looking for long-term work. Hey, I might want to jump from job 6 months here, a year here, go somewhere else, jump another job, another year there. And that's a huge red flag for us. Anytime I look at a resume and there are 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs under a year, under 2 years, that's a red flag for me, right?
It's a red flag for, I think, a lot of people, right? If you're jumping jobs and you're not even lasting a year per job, I can see where that's, I mean, it's definitely problematic. One of two things: one, you're just taking a job to get a paycheck. That's kind of a common thing. Or two, they just make bad choices. And if they just make bad choices, that's a ding.
Because you don't want to sink in 6 months, a year of training and all this upstart and then figure out, hey, they don't like the job, they don't like the role, they don't like the position. And like you said, they're making bad choices, right? So those are red flags I always look for.
There are certain situations where people are just not positioned in the right type of environment and they're learning, they're trying to figure out what type of environment they're going to do well in. But again, they've got to have some bit of self-awareness to be able to understand, hey, look, I didn't do well in these companies because of X. I learned that I need to be in an environment like this. And when they're feeding you that data and it does match up with your company, then it does make sense to continue the conversation. But if they're completely not self-aware and they're telling you that they thrive in an environment that's completely opposite of yours, there's no reason to move them through past the phone conversation, because quite frankly, they're not going to do well in your environment.
Right. 100%. Yeah. 100% correct.
All right. Culture fit. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So culture fit is such a broad word and it can mean so many things, right? Like some people take it as, people get along there. I get, they provide snacks, they provide food, they provide,
those are
cold
perks.
brew, whatever it is, they mistake it for culture fit, right? Everybody's relaxed. And the biggest thing for us is culture fit. You have to define culture or your people will do it for you, right? So if you don't have a clear defined culture and what is expected, the people within your company will make what they make of it, and everybody's definition is different, right? So defining your core values as a company, what are the absolute North Star items that you have to have that guides every position, no matter what position you're in, right? And that has to be developed with the C-level suite, the owners, the founders, to attract the right kind of person that fit that mold, right?
I love that you're saying this right now. I love that you're saying this, and I'm not. I preach this stuff all the time, and I did not feed any of this to you.
You definitely did not. This is from just experience, but also just being in different work environments, working as an employee, working as a founder. And I asked, some of the questions before, what was my favorite job to work in? And I looked towards what drove me, right? Is the exact type of culture and defined values, right? Core values. So for me, there has to be an alignment on that, right? Number one, an example, one of our core values at Wolfpack Automation is, one of our main ones is what we have an acronym for. It's called FIOGID, FIOGID. And that stands for figure it out, get it done. And it is one of these things at a core value because no matter what role you're in, you're going to face obstacles, right? You're going to have things that don't go your way. You are going to have fires to put out. And there are two types of people in my experience. One, a person that looks at it and goes into chaos mode and shuts down, right? And they are useless in that situation. The other person goes into solution mode and figures out, okay, how can I get this done, right? How can I solve this problem? And at the end of the day, that's what we do as a company. We're solving a problem. We're solving labor issues. We're solving production issues. We're solving headaches for people, right? So it aligns with kind of what we strive for as a company, right? So if my technician has an issue, I want him to have always that mindset of, being solution based. If my marketing person has an issue, I want him to have a mindset of solution based, right? Like, how can I figure this out? So that's one of our core values, and that's important to us. Hiring somebody that has the same mindset versus shut down, chaos mode is, the difference between making it
I
or
think
not.
that's such a great point to make because, quite frankly, and that's something you can find out or figure out in the interview process. Because if you give
Mhm.
somebody the expectation up front that, hey, this is our core value, this is how we operate, you're going to make your decisions. I'm going to teach you how to act in a way
Mhm.
that's going to drive your decision making. It just makes it so much easier for people to either succeed or fail very quickly. If you're
Mhm.
going back to your hire slow, fire fast, which by the way, nobody ever does. They all hire fast and fire slow. If you've got accountabilities built in and you've got a North Star and you can learn really quickly that, hey, this person shuts down when the going gets tough, you can have that
Mhm.
conversation and
Mhm.
potentially release them to a better situation for them.
Right. Exactly. And it's all about expectations, right? This is what we expect, these core values and
Yeah.
I always make sure, are you aligned with them? Can you follow through on it? And they say yes or no, right? And that lets me know if it's a fit. And even with the team that I bring in, we do every week, we have a powwow. Every Monday, we have a powwow with the entire team. And I have teams in-house, I have teams remote as well. And we actually go through the four core values. I have somebody read it, and then we do nominations of anyone that exhibited any of those core values within the last week. So it reinforces this idea of like recognition, right? Hey,
Yep.
our commission, he exhibited feel good because our freight company came, they didn't have a lift gate, and our forklift wasn't working, but he figured it out. He exemplified, figure it out, get it done. So
Andy,
just
I love what a great job you've been doing at this, by the way. All right, we're getting really close on time. We're going to have to wrap up here. But
oh,
what are 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that can plug into the business today?
I mean, number one, the biggest thing is define your role, right? Clarity kills confusion. Clearly define the role so expectations are set for both sides, and then define what success looks like, right? 30, 60, 90-day goal after the hire, 90-day goals after the hire. Success should be measurable, not mysterious. Number two, character. Clearly define the company's core values, communicate them early and often. Hire people whose attitude reflects your values, because culture isn't taught, it's lived. All right. Number three, an alignment and goals, right? Make sure their career and their personal goals have alignment with your goals for them. Don't hire just for the job, hire for the journey. And
Oh, I love that. That's a good. I'm gonna make that little snippet of content there. Thanks so much for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of the audience and community can reach you, find out more about your companies?
so you'll find us. Our website is www.wolf-packing. So WOLF hyphen PACKING.com. So that's our website. We're on LinkedIn. We're on social media, Instagram, or email me at andy@wolf-packing.com if you want to learn more.
All right. I love it. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power Radio. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Girard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share after all this show's for you. You can check us out further at Hire, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@intertrue.ai. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Girard.